So what do you get when you take a declining, aging roster, combine it with one or two effective new faces and a lot of depth pieces, and having it run all by an arrogant know-it-all GM? You get a recipe for disaster called the 2025 New Orleans Saints. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So over the weekend, I was kind of catching up on my Saints articles of various websites, plus watching videos, that sort of thing. Ran across an interesting one at louisianasports.net. And I believe I saw somewhere where Hunt Palmer on his radio show basically covered this topic. Um, but it was on the NFC South betting odds. As of right now, we're realistically, it's 2 weeks in counting tampering period, 2 weeks into free agency. And I thought it was kind of an interesting read in the fact that, um, to me, there was no real surprises. But kind of the reaction that I think I'm getting from people is, yeah, maybe that they are a little surprised, and I don't know why. This is from an online betting site's odds, which I'm not sure if I can name the site, but if you go to louisianasports.net and read the article, you'll should be able to find who's dropping these odds. But they have Tampa at 1-1 to win the division. Makes sense. They've won it each of the last 2 years. Atlanta 2-1. Atlanta almost pulled it out last year and stole it from Tampa Bay. They had a shot to do so. Carolina and the Saints obviously are 3-4. Carolina 4-1. New Orleans 7-1. Reaction I'm seeing is, oh, I don't think Carolina is that much better than us. I think that would be a legitimate argument, but I think the focal point is, in fact, the gamblers who really have no bias, no horse in this race whatsoever, other than to make money, other than to take your money, basically. They're not looking at it as a fan perspective as we would and have the debate, who's better, Carolina or New Orleans, when the overall theory is they're pretty much betting neither one has an opportunity to win the division. I don't think they're willing to sacrifice millions, tens of millions, however much money is going to be generated on betting this. There's probably more than that, just, on a whim. Now, they have their methods, and it's not always right, but I always said the odds markets are a pretty good indication of an unbiased set of numbers. The only bias they have, like I said, is making the green. And this is kind of, I'm sitting here reading this article and then seeing some of the reaction to it. Yeah, this is a direct result of rolling it back again. Keep bringing back that declining talent and not showing that you're making a legitimate effort to make the team better. And that's the beginning of a recipe of disaster. And it's getting pointed out by people who honestly could probably care less who wins the division as long as they come out on the right side of the money issue. And like I said, we're basically the second week of free agency. And nothing appears to have happened that would make us feel better going, hey, we're making great strides to correcting our holes, fixing our problems. And the takeaway from that is if Mickey legitimately thinks this is a team that can win the division and make the playoffs, stop and think. Tampa Bay was better than us last year. Atlanta, we had a shot winning one of those games, but realistically, they were a better football team than we were last year, especially when the young quarterback came in at the end of the year and started lighting it up. Carolina was a disaster at the beginning of the season. In the middle of the season, they whipped our ass. And it's one of the games that the Saints played that I think the score was actually closer than the ass kicking we took. And they were finishing on a strong note with their young quarterback after benching, coming back and maybe figuring it out. And if he has, all of a sudden that 4-1, maybe maybe closer to the truth. With guesswork, I would have thought both Carolina and the Saints would be 7-6-1. But still, even 4-1's a long way away from winning the division. 7-1 is a way, way long way to winning the division. To win the division, you're going to have to minimum win 4 games. That'll probably get you somewhere around 9 and hope that's enough. Tampa and Atlanta have tried, and Carolina too, for that matter, all been proactive, trying to improve the roster from last year. We really haven't. What leads Mickey to believe, and I get he's riding a whole lot on, well, we'll be healthy, so we'll be better. I don't know healthy if your roster was as good to make it through 17 games and on the back end of the schedule be able to survive like Tampa Bay basically did and Atlanta almost did. But now they're all a year older, and so the odds of injury, while not as severe and missing as many games as last year, is likely. But the odds of injury haven't gone down. Their expected level of play when fully healthy a year later probably hasn't gone down much, maybe. In some cases, possibly, and very much so. But for the most part, looking at that roster last year, how many of those guys are you expecting their level of play to go up significantly? It's going to have to go up significantly to win. And if you really want to be safe in the division and making the playoffs, you pretty much got to run a 5-1 record. That should get you 10, 11 wins in that area. And you're more than likely safe at playing a playoff game in January at home. I'll be honest with you. There's no way I would bet a penny at 7-1 odds that what Mickey is doing right now is going to get to that 9, 10, 11 win plateau to make that happen. So after talking about odds makers, I see an article from a popular, reputable professional football analyst site and PFF, Pro Football Focus. They drop Sunday or Monday somewhere in there their power rankings based on, so far up until the first 2 weeks of free agency. Now, I clicked on it expecting, I'll have to scroll down a little bit to find the Saints. Quite honestly, I was not expecting to scroll all the way down to number 29. My expectation, if you kind of divide it into thirds, 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21, 22 to 32, I'm saying we'll be at the end of group 2, somewhere at the beginning of group 3. Slightly below average. Wasn't expecting us to be in the bottom 5. So basically, they had the Patriots at 28, us at 29, the Browns, the Giants, and the Titans rounding it out in last place in their power rankings. As far as the rest of the division, they're looking at the Panthers as 23, the Falcons at 19, which I found a little surprising, and Tampa at number 10, which I thought actually that sounded about right. But would really kind of open my eyes is their little blurb explaining it. And they talked about how we restructured several veteran contracts, including Derek Carr. And I don't know why they mentioned Carl Granderson. There was a couple more, probably more egregious than him, bringing him back. But this is the point. Most of their spending went to retaining Chase Young and Juwan Johnson, who I think arguably are both, you're hoping they hit, especially for what you're paying them, what you're going to need them to do to make your team better and win more football games. Maybe you get one. Do you get both? I don't know. Now, Justin Reed boosting the secondary. I do think that was a good signing. Very underrated, good football player that, I think there were some guys that probably aren't as good as him that got paid more money in front of him. So I think we kind of got a deal on that. So in all fairness to Mickey, he did one thing, I think, right. But this is the last paragraph is really the thing that makes it kind of eye-opening is the new additions don't really address their needs outside of the safety. And the additions they brought back don't necessarily fill holes. They kind of do in a way, but it's more like a stopgap measure that you hope is a full fix. But the last line just got me to the core. Their best hope is that their core players stay healthy enough to provide some stability. It's almost like they're looking at it going, Ted Rath is probably the most important person that the Saints have added this offseason, which is the new director of sports science. Trying to keep guys healthy, trying to get them back from injury, trying to find ways to be more efficient, effective, find ways to get them stronger, faster. But it's not necessarily who we brought in. It's not names flying out at you, other than kind of Justin Reed going, hey, they went out and they did some work with basically restructuring the whole roster. But the only veteran making any substantial money that wasn't restructured is Taysom Hill. Look, he's coming off a serious injury at age 35 at the end of the season. So until somebody figures out what's going on with him, he's just going to kind of sit there. But everybody else got you $33 million under the cap. You brought in Reed. Kudos to you. Gottschall was a good trade because there's a need we needed filled. A guy that can stop the run, especially at the nose, and then help out at other spots along the defensive line, especially as you're thinking we're switching to a 3-4. Wasn't that expensive. Didn't cost you much in draft capital to get him. We talked about Cooks. We've talked about some of the other signings that are basically backups, and you did improve your depth more than likely in this whole scenario. Fine. I get it. You get racked up with the injuries you had last year again this year. It's going to screw you, but at least you have a chance to be better because you actually can have a few positions with some depth to it that might get you through some lean and tough times, like most other NFL teams do. And yesterday, we re-signed, basically bring back Ugo Amadi. Again, a depth move. I don't necessarily hate it, but I don't necessarily love it. Yesterday, Monday, we also brought in ex-Titans offensive guard, right guard mostly, although he bopped around the line a little bit, by the name of Dylan Rodunz. And I already had a bad feeling about this one last week because New Orleans media types were already throwing out that he was coming for a visit, and they were already trying to sell us on how great of a move this would be to sign this young man. Look, it could work out. But I know a couple of things. One, PFF, who we just referred to in the previous segment, not impressed with him as a right guard. Now, some of the guys trying to pump this up brought it up and went, you can't always trust PFF grades. Fine. If that's the way you think, don't ever bring it up again. I don't put 100% trust in them, but I don't dismiss them either. So when they're going to flag a guy as not being very good, it'd be worth mentioning and kind of paying attention to. Even better mentioning is Locked on Titans, and I can't remember the man's name, but the guy who does the Locked on Titans podcast, somebody sent me a clip of him talking about, and I'm going to have to paraphrase this, but he's talking about, hey, look, if you want an offensive lineman who's barely NFL quality starter and should be fairly cheap, Redunz is your guy. Wow, that's right up Mickey Loomis's alley. And I tell you what, Landon Young the last couple of years, who we just also re-signed, I'm beginning to wonder if you couldn't say the exact same thing about him. And he played a lot of left guard in the last couple of years, especially last year when he was healthy. Maybe that's the big rub on Redunz. He plays a lot of games and doesn't get hurt. I don't know. But already trying to sell, well, he could be the guy that replaces Lucas Patrick. And I have another problem with that because Lucas Patrick was actually a left guard. And he was okay there last year. His problem was he kept having to slide over and play center because of the injuries there. Somebody explain to me, tell me, and sell me that Redunz is going to be an upgrade. Not replacing Lucas Patrick. If we want to get better, the other four guys who we're counting on are going to have to get better, especially the tackles and the right guard, and you're going to have to get better play at left guard. just kind of going through the Saints additions overall at this point, Reed and Godshaw, thumbs up. Good job, Mickey. Guys like Cooks, Stahl, Clapp on the offensive side, hey, some depth. If you need them, maybe we get a resurgence of Cooks and can get somewhere in that neighborhood of like a few years ago, and 50 catches, 600 yards, score you some points. It's the likely third, fourth receiver where he would be in this room. If you can get him up to there and anything over that, okay, you've hit on that. I just don't know. Stahl's a blocking tight end that improves your three-headed monster that you kind of have to run at the tight end position because, look, it's what we had to work with last year. The combined numbers of the tight end position weren't top in the NFL, but they weren't on the ass end of numbers either. And you paid them accordingly. Now you still need the basically the three-headed monster at tight end, and Stahl's a good addition for it. But the problem here is you paid the guy which you would have paid more than Evan Ingram. For example, that if Ingram shows up here, it's much less of a three-headed monster tight end by committee. Pretty much Ingram with the other two guys kind of doing the backup roles and the job-specific roles that would probably make them better football players instead of having to do this three-man rotation thing. You brought back Pettis for wide receiver depth, Chase Young, Juwan Johnson, quite honestly, kind of tired of talking about them, but they have to be impact players this year because you paid them like it. If you want to win games and you didn't bother to go get actual more proven impact players in the last season or two, hey, it's got to work. Bringing back Amadi yesterday and Yidam, depth spot starters, you need those. Kind of some familiar guys in the building, so don't necessarily hate him as long as you didn't, again, overpay like Mickey's want to do or give him too many years. Also brought back Landon Young, but again, depth, swing lineman, probably about as good as you're going to get out there. The problem is he may be, as it's been stated, that, if you barely have an NFL level starting lineman in him and it's not going to cost a lot, you likely had that in Landon Young the whole time. So overall, none of this is really replacing. I think your two big losses. Adebo's a huge one, and you haven't come close to replacing that. And look, I will keep saying, and people are accusing me of, I don't know, man crush on MVS, whatever. MVS is a better option, especially for the money that Seattle spent compared to what we spent on Cooks. MVS was a better option to keep here instead of doing whatever we were doing. We missed on Ward. We missed on Cup. I get all that. But I'm going to just bring back that once all that happened, Freeze was done by that point. So you really couldn't address the left guard, but you still had Jenkins and Becton. And, I mean, it was crickets coming out of those camps. This roster, I will concede, is probably not as bad as I'm projecting and thinking it will be by the time we kick off the season. But I can't buy into any type of improvement actually happening here. Zero, none at all. Like I said, you held water at some spots, you backed up some spots, you probably improved safety that you know of, and you helped out the defensive line. But one guy at that position ain't going to be enough. What annoys me, what is driving me to no end in all this is I think Mickey in the front office just they feel like they don't have to make the roster better because they completely self-delusional, I think, at this point, thinking we had the roster last year, we'd have done it. So we're going to bring it all back. And God is my witness, I think this is what it boils down to. If Mickey could be completely honest to speaking to fans, media, and the rest of the NFL and everything else, the phrase, and I'm going to prove y'all all wrong this year, would likely come out of his mouth. It is a recipe for disaster. But can we fix this? Yes. Can Mickey make some free agent moves still out there? Or one of the ones I'm kind of not high on actually hitting and turning out and being the guy going, holy crap, that changed the whole course of that position group and that side of the ball? Absolutely. I wouldn't going back to the betting angle, I wouldn't bet a penny on it. Not right now. They have not been good at finding these guys at the level we need to find them in free agency in so long. I can't trust any of this. We've self-delusion almost about the guys already in our roster. And we've seen this over the years going, that guy's really good. He just hadn't figured it out yet, so we're going to pay him a lot of money. Meanwhile, somebody who can figure it out walks out the door and has career years and basically careers on other teams. And we're still dealing with that. You could have a great draft. You could have a 2006 or a 2017 draft. Absolutely. I don't know if you quite have the talent in it as far as high end. But pick number 9. Yeah, you're going to have a great chance of getting at least one of those guys. After that, you're going to have to do your homework because there's good players, a lot of them with potential, a lot of them who likely are going to be as good or better than guys you already have on your roster that you think you're going to count on. So all that would make you better. But a great draft like 06 or 17, until they prove they can do it, I have to keep assuming they can't. It's been 8 years. And in between 06 and 2017, they had some really bad drafts in between. My biggest fear, though, coming out in the draft, and if I'm going to have nightmares about this, I'm sharing them with y'all. So, and this is one I hope doesn't come to pass, but if it does, then I'm dead wrong about what I'm about to say. But my biggest fear, and then there's a lot of hype yesterday when they're in Miami watching Miami's pro day and Cam Ward. We're going to sell the form to move up to draft our quarterback of the future. And that's what this plan is kind of. It's just, I have nothing to base this on other than a bad feeling. Those bad feelings I get around the Saints when stuff like this could happen. And the reason why I'm so dead set against it is because this roster is a mess. It's going to keep being a mess because a lot of the problems you have to clear up. Some of them are going to be back here again next year with the inability to move on from them, especially if you have to package up a lot of picks in this year and next year's draft to move up to draft your quarterback of the future, who I'm not saying Ward or Sanders or they're in love with Dart, as reports have said, or whoever. You start giving a draft capital to move up to make sure you get them, what you're going to wind up with is potentially a franchise quarterback. Hey, I don't know. But a rookie franchise quarterback on a team that's just going to continue to be declining over the next couple of seasons. That's a recipe for disaster. That's how you become the Giants. That's how you become the Jets. That's how you become the Browns. That's how PFF can be just so unimpressed looking around what you've been doing and going, they aren't doing anything to make themselves better. They aren't doing anything to move up their level of talent and ability to win football games up the scale in the NFL. It is frustrating, maddening frustrating to watch this happening over and over and over again to the point that I try to get a little excited, like coming out hot in free agency with the trade and the signing of Reed, going, if we can just follow this up with one or two really more goods, we have a chance. And no go, man. Just ain't going to happen. So look, I'm just kind of unburdening my worries and frustration right now. I get that, but I feel like there's a lot of Saints fans that are burdened and frustrated like I am. Let me know down in the comments. Let me know if you think we can pull this off without having a 2017 type draft, because I just don't think we can. Unless that happens, unless we can bag some some really good football players. I had 6 to 8 wins till they could prove different. I mean, that's just kind of where I'm sitting right now. Everything's going to heat up over the next few weeks, and I think that's where everybody's focus is going to be to the rookies. We're going to have to do a great job there, no doubt. Like I said, let me know in the comments if you think we can pull this off with what we got, or do we need to have a banger 2025 draft? Because I think we need the banger. First time here, let's feed the algorithm, hit like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. But just let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job. Till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.